You've been lied to about love. Every romantic movie, every love song, every piece of relationship advice you've ever received has been selling you the same dangerous myth. The myth that says if you just find the one, if you just fall hard enough, if the chemistry is just right, then love will take care of itself. That passion will last forever. That understanding will come naturally. Here's the brutal truth no one wants to tell you. The divorce rate isn't high because people choose the wrong partners. It's high because even the right partners are speaking different languages to each other. Every single day. Imagine this. You're screaming, "I love you" at the top of your lungs, but your partner only speaks French. You're pouring your heart out, but they hear nothing but noise. Now imagine this has been happening for years. In your marriage, in your relationship, with your children, to everyone you've ever tried to love. What if I told you that right now, in this very moment, someone in your life is desperately trying to show you love, but you can't hear it? What if I told you that you've been trying to love people your entire life, but they couldn't feel it, not because you weren't loving hard enough, but because you were loving in the wrong language? This isn't about effort. This isn't about finding someone new. This is about a fundamental discovery that has saved over 20 million relationships worldwide. A discovery so simple, yet so profound, that once you understand it, you'll never look at love the same way again. Welcome to the 5 Love Languages by Dr. Gary Chapman. This isn't just another relationship book. This is the decoder ring to human connection, the Rosetta Stone of the heart. Over the next 2 hours, we're going to do something that should have been taught to you in school, something that could have saved you years of pain and confusion. We're going to teach you how to become fluent in love. But here's what makes this different from every other relationship guide you've encountered. We're not going to tell you how to find love. We're going to show you how to speak it. We're not going to promise you a fairy tale. We're going to hand you the tools to build something better than a fairy tale. Something real. Something that lasts. By the time we finish this journey together, you'll understand why your past relationships followed the exact same pattern. Why certain people in your life never seem satisfied no matter what you do. Why you felt unloved, even when surrounded by people who claim to care about you. More importantly, you'll know exactly how to fix it. We're about to unlock the 5 universal ways humans give and receive love. Think of them as 5 different dialects of the same language. Most of us are only fluent in 1, maybe 2. But imagine what becomes possible when you can speak all 5. Imagine the connections you could build, the relationships you could transform, the love you could finally feel and express fully. In the next 2 hours, we're not just going to read a book. We're going to rewire the way you understand human connection at its most fundamental level. We're going to install a new operating system for your relationships. And unlike most relationship advice that asks you to change who you are, this is about understanding who you already are and who the people you love already are. The journey ahead is structured like a masterclass in human connection. We'll start by shattering the myths about love that keep us stuck. Then one by one, we'll master each of the 5 love languages. Finally, we'll put it all together into a practical system. You can start using the moment this video ends. Here's your roadmap to transformation. Chapter 1, we'll expose what really happens to love after the wedding and why the honeymoon phase is actually your enemy. In Chapter 2, you'll discover the concept of the emotional love tank and why most relationships are running on empty. Chapter 3 reveals the neuroscience of falling in love and why your brain has been sabotaging your relationships. Then we dive deep into the 5 languages themselves. Chapter 4 unlocks words of affirmation and why some people literally need verbal love to survive. Chapter 5 explores quality time and why your presence might be the most powerful gift you can give. Chapter 6 reveals why receiving gifts isn't materialistic, but deeply symbolic for millions of people. Chapter 7 shows how acts of service speak louder than any words for certain personality types. Chapter 8 uncovers physical touch as a primary emotional language, not just a physical need. In Chapter 9, we'll give you the tools to discover your own primary love language and why you've been starving for one specific type of love your entire life. Chapter 10 confronts the hard truth that love is a choice, not just a feeling. Chapter 11 shows you how to love when love seems impossible. Chapter 12 teaches you to love even the most difficult people in your life. And we'll conclude with Chapter 13, where Dr. Chapman speaks directly to your situation, whatever it may be. Let's begin this journey. Let's start with the question that changes everything. Chapter 1. What happens to love after the wedding? What if everything you believe about falling in love is backward? What if the very thing we celebrate, the butterflies, the obsession, the can't sleep feeling, is actually the biggest threat to lasting love? Here's what no one tells you about the honeymoon phase. It's not the beginning of love. It's nature's trick. A biological conspiracy designed to make two people mate and reproduce. That's it. The average lifespan of romantic obsession, 2 years. Scientists have measured it. Brain scans have proven it. After 24 months, the cocaine-like high of new love doesn't just fade. It vanishes. Completely. And then what? Then you wake up next to a stranger, someone you thought you knew inside and out, suddenly feels like an alien. Their cute quirks become annoying habits. Their different way of doing things becomes a personal attack. The person who could do no wrong suddenly can't do anything right. This is the moment most people panic. They think they chose wrong. They think love has died. They think it's time to leave and find someone new, someone who will make them feel that high again. And so the cycle continues. New person, new high, new crash. Over and over, chasing a drug that always runs out. But what if that crash isn't the end of love? What if it's the beginning? Dr. Chapman discovered something profound in his decades of marriage counseling. The couples who made it, who built something beautiful and lasting, they all understood one crucial truth. Your love doesn't begin until the illusion of love ends. Your love begins the moment your brain stops drugging you, and you have to make a choice. Will you learn to love this real person in front of you, or will you chase the ghost of infatuation forever? Here's the distinction that changes everything. Falling in love is involuntary. It happens to you. But real love is an art form, a skill, a language you must learn to speak. And just like any language, if you don't learn it properly, you'll spend your life surrounded by people you can't truly communicate with. Think about your past relationships. Remember how they all followed the same pattern? Incredible beginning, passionate middle, confusing end. You blamed yourself. You blamed them. You blamed timing or circumstances. But what if the problem was never the who or the when? What if the problem was that you were both speaking different languages the entire time? This is what happens after the wedding, after the honeymoon, after the drugs wear off. Two people who desperately want to love each other realize they don't know how. Not because they're broken, not because they're incompatible, but because no one ever taught them that love is a language, and they've been speaking different dialects their entire lives. The tragedy isn't that love fades. The tragedy is that we expect it to sustain itself without any effort, without any learning, without any understanding of how it actually works. We don't expect to play Mozart without piano lessons. We don't expect to speak Mandarin without study. Yet we expect to master the most complex human experience with nothing but good intentions and hormones. Right now, you might be in a relationship where you feel unseen, unheard, unloved. Or maybe you're the one being accused of not caring, not trying, not loving enough. What if both of you are wrong? What if you're both loving at full volume, but in languages the other person doesn't speak? This chapter isn't about accepting that love dies. It's about understanding that infatuation isn't love at all. It's the trailer for love, the free trial, the tutorial level. Real love begins when you have to learn how to love someone who is different from you, someone whose needs don't match your instincts, someone who receives love in ways that might feel completely foreign to your nature. The question isn't whether the honeymoon phase will end. It will. Brain chemistry guarantees it. The question is, what will you do when it does? Will you run, searching for the next high? Or will you stay and learn the language of the person in front of you? The couples who last don't last because they found the one. They last because they learned how to love the one they found. And that learning begins with understanding a concept so simple, yet so revolutionary, that it will change how you see every relationship in your life. Which brings us to Chapter 2, in the discovery of the emotional love tank. Chapter 2. Keeping the love tank full. Every person you've ever met is walking around with an invisible fuel gauge on their chest. You can't see it, but it's there. Right now, as you're listening to this, your emotional love tank is either full, empty, or somewhere in between. And here's what's terrifying. The state of that tank determines almost everything about how you show up in the world. When your love tank is full, you're patient. You're generous. Give people the benefit of the doubt. Problems feel manageable. The future looks bright, you have energy to spare. But when that tank hits empty, everything changes. Suddenly you're irritable, defensive. The smallest slight feels like a personal attack. You have nothing left to give because you're running on fumes. Dr. Chapman's breakthrough wasn't just recognizing that we all have this emotional love tank. It was understanding that we all have different fuel types. What fills your tank might drain someone else's. What leaves you empty might overflow another person's tank. And most of us spend our lives trying to fill other people's tanks with the wrong fuel. Imagine going to a gas station and trying to fill a diesel truck with regular unleaded. Not only won't it work, you'll damage the engine. It's what we do in relationships every single day. We give love the way we want to receive it, not the way the other person needs to receive it. Then we wonder why they're still running on empty. Here's a painful truth. You could be the most loving person in the world, pouring out effort and affection every single day. And if you're speaking the wrong love language, the person you love most will still feel unloved. They'll still be empty. And eventually, they'll go looking for someone who speaks their language. Think about a relationship in your life that's struggling right now. Maybe it's your marriage. Maybe it's with your teenager who won't talk to you. Maybe it's with a parent who never seems satisfied. What if the problem isn't that they're difficult or demanding? What if their tank is just empty and you've been trying to fill it with the wrong fuel for years? The metaphor of the love tank isn't just clever, it's scientifically accurate. Neuroscientists have shown that emotional connection releases specific chemicals in our brain: oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, when we feel loved in the way we need to feel loved. Our brain literally changes its chemistry. We become different people, better people, the people we were meant to be. But here's where it gets complicated. We're all convinced that the way we experience love is the way everyone experiences love. If quality time fills your tank, you can't imagine how someone could feel loved without it. If words of affirmation mean nothing to you, you can't understand why someone needs constant verbal encouragement. We project our own love language onto everyone around us, then feel confused and hurt when they don't respond. This is why good intentions aren't enough. This is why trying harder doesn't work. You can't fill a love tank with the wrong fuel no matter how much you pour in. And here's the real tragedy. Most people go their entire lives with their love tank on empty, surrounded by people who are desperately trying to love them in all the wrong ways. Children grow up feeling unloved by parents who sacrificed everything for them. Spouses feel abandoned by partners who work tirelessly to provide for them. Friends drift apart, each feeling like they gave more than they received. All because no one ever taught them this simple truth. Love isn't just what you give, it's giving what the other person can actually receive. Right now, someone in your life has been trying to love you in their language, not yours, and you've been missing it. Right now, you've been trying to love someone in your language, not theirs, and they've been missing it. The love is there. It's always been there. It's just been lost in translation. But before we can learn these 5 languages, before we can start filling tanks with the right fuel, we need to understand why our instincts are so wrong. We need to understand the biological trick that makes us think we know how to love when we're really just high on brain chemicals. Which brings us to Chapter 3, and the truth about falling in love. Chapter 3. Falling in love. Your brain is a drug dealer, and falling in love is its most powerful product. When you meet someone who triggers attraction, your brain floods your system with a cocktail of chemicals that would be illegal if sold. On the street, dopamine, norepinephrine, serotonin, oxytocin. This isn't poetry. This is neuroscience. Brain scans of people in love look identical to brain scans of people on cocaine. The same regions light up. The same addictive patterns emerge. The same irrational behavior follows. You can't eat, you can't sleep, you can't think about anything else. You check your phone obsessively. One text can make your entire day. One missed call can ruin it. Here's what's actually happening. Your brain has decided this person might be a good genetic match, so it drugs you into compliance. It overrides your logic centers, suppresses your ability to see flaws, cranks up your energy and optimism to superhuman levels. Why? Because evolution doesn't care about your happiness. It cares about reproduction. And nothing motivates mating like a brain full of love drugs. Dr. Chapman calls this the in-love experience, and he makes a distinction that changes everything. Being in love and actually loving someone are completely different experiences. One is involuntary, the other is a choice. One is temporary, the other can last forever. One is selfish, the other is selfless. but we've confused them so completely that when the drugs wear off, we think love is gone. Remember the last time you fell in love? Remember how that person seemed perfect? How everything they did was endearing? How their voice was music and their presence was home? Now remember what happened next. Slowly, the perfection started to crack. Their cute laugh became annoying. Their spontaneity became irresponsibility. Their attention to detail became nitpicking. What changed? They didn't. Your brain chemistry did. The dealer cut off your supply. And suddenly you could see clearly for the first time. The person in front of you wasn't a god or goddess. They were human, flawed, different from you in ways that weren't charming anymore but challenging. This is the moment of truth in every relationship. This is where real love either begins or the relationship ends, because now you have to choose. Will you love this real person, or will you go searching for the next high? Here's what makes this so insidious. The in-love experience is so powerful, so overwhelming, that we think it's the ultimate form of love. We chase it. We mourn its loss. We measure all future relationships against that impossible standard. But asking real love to compete with the in-love experience is like asking a nutritious meal to compete with cocaine. One destroys you quickly, the other sustains you forever. The research is clear. Average in-love experience lasts 2 years. Some shorter, some longer. But 2 years is the mean. After that, your brain returns to baseline. The person who was perfect becomes human. The relationship that was effortless becomes work. And if you don't understand what's happening, if you think this means love has died, you'll make the same mistake millions make. You'll leave and start the cycle again. But what if those 2 years aren't meant to last? What if they're just meant to get you started? What if the real purpose of the in-love experience is to connect you with someone long enough to discover if you can build real love together? Think about it. During the in-love phase, you have superhuman energy. You'll drive across town at 2 a.m. just to see them. You'll talk for hours about nothing. You'll forgive instantly. You'll give generously. The in-love experience gives you a glimpse of your highest potential as a lover. The question is, can you choose to continue loving that way when the drugs wear off? This is why arranged marriages often report higher satisfaction than love marriages after the 5-year mark. They never had the in-love experience to compare against. They started with reality. They built love slowly, deliberately, like learning a language instead of being born fluent. You might be thinking this sounds depressing. Like we're saying romantic love is a lie, but that's not it at all. The in-love experience is a gift. It shows us what's possible. It breaks down our walls and opens our hearts. It gives us the courage to be vulnerable with another human being. But it's meant to be the spark that starts the fire, not the fire itself. Real love begins when you wake up one morning and the magic is gone, but you choose to love anyway. When you see your partner clearly, flaws and all, and decide they're worth learning how to love, when you stop expecting them to read your mind and start learning to speak their language. The couples who last aren't the ones who stayed in love. They're the ones who learned to love after being in love ended. They're the ones who understood that the in-love experience was just the free trial, and real love is the subscription you choose to renew every single day. Which brings us to the heart of this book. If real love is a language, then there are different dialects. 5 to be exact. And your ability to love and be loved depends entirely on learning which language you speak, and which languages the people you love speak. We're about to decode the first of these 5 languages. For millions of people around the world, this first language is the difference between feeling loved and feeling invisible. Chapter 4. Love language number 1. Words of affirmation. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Whoever said that was either lying or spoke a different love language. Because for people whose primary love language is words of affirmation, words don't just hurt, they wound, they scar. They echo in their minds for years, sometimes decades. But here's the flip side. For these same people, the right words at the right time don't just help. They heal. They transform. They can literally change the trajectory of someone's entire day, week, or life. If words of affirmation is your primary love language, you don't just enjoy compliments. You need them like plants need sunlight. Let me paint you a picture of someone who speaks this language. They remember every harsh word their parents said to them in anger, even decades later. But they also remember that one teacher who believed in them, whose encouraging words still echo in their moments of self-doubt. They replay conversations in their head, analyzing tone and meaning. They screenshot text messages that made them feel loved and read them when they're feeling down. For these people, I love you isn't just nice to hear. It's essential nutrition for their soul. But here's what most people don't understand. Words of affirmation isn't just about saying I love you or giving compliments. It's about verbal recognition of who someone is, what they do, and why they matter. Think about the difference between these two statements. Thanks for making dinner versus I noticed you made my favorite meal. Even though you had a crazy day at work, it really means a lot to me. Both express gratitude, but only one fills the love tank of someone who speaks words of affirmation. Dr. Chapman discovered that people who speak this love language need specific types of verbal communication. First, words of encouragement. Not false flattery, but genuine recognition of effort and potential. I know this presentation has you stressed, but I've seen you prepare. You're going to be amazing. That sentence could carry someone through a week of anxiety. Second, words of appreciation. Not just for what they do, but for who they are. I love how you always find a way to make people laugh, even in tough situations. That's such a gift. For someone whose love language is words of affirmation, hearing their character acknowledged is like a direct hit of love. Words of empathy. That must have been so frustrating when your boss dismissed your idea. I can see how hard you worked on it. Validation of feelings, recognition of struggles, verbal confirmation that someone sees and understands them. But here's where it gets painful. If words of affirmation is your partner's primary love language and you're not naturally verbal, they're slowly starving. Might be showing love through acts of service, working overtime to provide for them, fixing things around the house, making their life easier in 1,000 ways. But if you're not speaking their language, they feel unloved. Worse, if you're critical, sarcastic, or dismissive with your words, you're not just failing to fill their tank, you're actively draining it. That offhand comment you made in frustration, you're still thinking about it. That joke at their expense, it wasn't funny to them. It was a wound. That time you failed to acknowledge their achievement, they noticed. They always notice. Here's a hard truth for those who don't speak this language. You might think your partner is too sensitive, too needy, too focused on words when actions should matter more. But telling someone who speaks words of affirmation to not take things so personally is like telling someone who speaks English to just understand. When you're speaking to them in Russian, it's not about sensitivity. It's about language. The good news? This might be the easiest love language to learn. You don't need money. You don't need to rearrange your schedule. You just need to pay attention and speak up. Notice what they do. Acknowledge who they are. Express what they mean to you. Be generous with your words the way you'd be generous with gifts, if that was their language. Start with one genuine affirmation a day. Not generic compliments, but specific recognition. I love how patient you were with the kids during homework tonight. Your presentation was brilliant. I especially loved how you handled that difficult question. You always know exactly what to say when I'm stressed. How do you do that? For those whose primary language is words of affirmation, these aren't just nice things to hear. They're deposits in the emotional bank account. They're proof of love. They're the fuel that keeps them going. And here's what's beautiful. When their tank is full, they become the most encouraging, supportive, verbally generous people you'll ever meet. They give what they need to receive. But words are just one of 5 languages. For millions of others, you can talk all day, and they'll still feel empty. Because their love language isn't about what you say. It's about something far more valuable in our modern world. Which brings us to Chapter 5, and the love language that no amount of money can buy. Chapter 5. Love language number 2, quality time. You can't multitask love. If quality time is someone's love language, that sentence might be the most important thing you'll hear today. Because for these people, your presence isn't just appreciated, it's everything. And your distraction isn't just annoying, it's rejection. In our hyper-connected world, we've forgotten what presence actually means. Think we're spending time with someone when we're in the same room, both scrolling through our phones. We think we're having quality time when the TV is on in the background. We think we're present when our body is there, but our mind is at work, planning tomorrow or lost in our own thoughts. For someone whose primary love language is quality time, this half-presence is worse than absence. Because what they're really craving isn't just your time, it's your attention, your focus. But they want to be the only notification that matters for the next hour. They want to feel like they're worth putting the phone down for. Dr. Chapman breaks quality time into several dialects, and understanding these distinctions changes everything. First, there's focused conversation. Not talking while doing dishes, not catching up while driving, but sitting down, making eye contact, and having a real conversation where both people are fully present. For some, this focused attention is the highest form of love. Second, there's quality activities. But here's the key. The activity doesn't matter nearly as much as the togetherness. It could be hiking, cooking, playing a board game, or just taking a walk. What matters is that you're doing it together, fully engaged, creating a shared experience. The person whose love language is quality time doesn't necessarily need expensive dates or elaborate plans. They need undivided attention during whatever you're doing together. Here's how you know if someone speaks this language. They light up when you suggest doing something together, just the two of you. They get hurt when you cancel plans, even if you have a good reason. They notice immediately when you check your phone during a conversation. They'd rather have 1 hour of your undivided attention than a whole day of you being physically present, but mentally elsewhere. These are the people who remember every detail of your early dates, when you talked for hours and time seemed to stop. They're still chasing that feeling of being the center of someone's universe, even if just for an evening. When their love tank is full from quality time, they feel secure, valued, prioritized. When it's empty, they feel forgotten, unimportant, like an afterthought in your busy life. The tragedy is that quality time speakers often end up with partners who show love through acts of service or gifts. The partner works extra hours to provide nice things, thinking they're showing love. Meanwhile, the quality time speaker would trade all the gifts in the world for a regular date night. The provider feels unappreciated. The quality time speaker feels abandoned. Both are loving hard in the wrong language. If you love someone whose primary language is quality time, here's what you need to know. Your presence is your present. Putting away distractions is romance. Eye contact is intimacy. Shared experiences are the threads that weave your lives together. Every time you choose them over your phone, your work, your hobbies, or other people, you're saying I love you in their language. This doesn't mean you need to spend every moment together. Quality time speakers aren't necessarily clingy. They just need to know that when you are together, you're really together. They need scheduled, protected, sacred time where they have you completely. Where the world stops and it's just the two of you, even if it's just for 30 minutes over morning coffee. Here's a practical experiment. For the next week, create one daily ritual of undivided attention with someone you love. Maybe it's 15 minutes after dinner with no phones. Maybe it's a walk around the block where you really talk. Maybe it's bedtime stories with your child where you're not mentally writing tomorrow's to-do list. Watch what happens. If their love language is quality time, you'll see them transform before your eyes. But here's what's challenging about this language in our modern world. Quality time is expensive, not in money, but in our most limited resource: attention. We live in an economy of distraction. Everything is designed to pull our focus. Choosing to give someone undivided attention is becoming a radical act of love. The beautiful thing about quality time speakers is that when their tank is full, they become incredibly present themselves. They're the ones who remember the small details you mentioned weeks ago. They're fully engaged in conversations. They create spaces where others feel heard and valued. They give what they most need to receive. But for millions of others, time and words aren't enough. They need something tangible, something they can hold, something that says, I was thinking of you when you weren't even here. Which brings us to the most misunderstood of all the love languages. Chapter 6. Love language number 3. Receiving gifts. It's the thought that counts. We've all heard it. But for people whose primary love language is receiving gifts, it's not just a nice saying. It's the absolute truth. Because the gift isn't about the object. It's about what the object represents. You thought of me. You saw something and connected it to me. You invested time, effort, or resources to make me feel loved. This is the most misunderstood love language because our materialistic culture has twisted it into something it's not. People whose love language is receiving gifts aren't shallow or greedy. In fact, they're often the most sentimental people you'll meet. They keep ticket stubs from your first date, press flowers from special occasions. They can tell you the story behind every meaningful gift they've ever received. For these people, a gift is a physical symbol of love. It's love made tangible. It's proof that they matter enough to be thought of when you're apart. The gift could be a rock you found on a walk that made you think of them. It could be their favorite candy bar grabbed at the gas station. It could be a handwritten note left on their pillow. The price tag is irrelevant.
The thought behind it
Is everything. Dr. Chapman discovered something fascinating about gift givers across cultures. In every society studied, gift giving is part of the love marriage process. It's a universal language that transcends cultures. But here's what most people miss. For someone whose primary love language is receiving gifts, the gift is love incarnate. When you give them a gift, you're giving them love in physical form. Here's how you recognize someone who speaks this language. They remember every gift they've ever received and who gave it to them. They display gifts prominently in their home or office. They get genuinely excited about the gift-giving process, both giving and receiving. They notice when special occasions pass without recognition. They keep things that others would throw away because of the memories attached. These are the people who still have the movie ticket from your first date, who wear the jewelry you gave them years ago even if it's tarnished, who display the children's artwork like it belongs in a museum. For them, these objects aren't clutter. They're a physical archive of love. But here's where the misunderstanding causes pain. Their partner might think they're materialistic, high maintenance, or focused on things instead of what really matters. So the partner rebels against gift giving, thinking they're taking a stand against consumerism. Meanwhile, the gift lover feels forgotten, unvalued, like they're not worth the effort of being thought about. The truth is, receiving gifts might be the easiest and most straightforward love language to speak. Once you understand, it's not about money, it's about thoughtfulness. It's about creating physical reminders that say, "You matter to me even when you're not here." It's about the effort, not the expense. Here's what fills the love tank of someone who speaks this language. Consistency matters more than cost. Small gift every week means more than one expensive gift a year. Thoughtfulness trumps price every time. A book by their favorite author, their preferred coffee order, a plant for their desk because they mentioned wanting one. These say I pay attention to you in their language. The presentation matters too. Taking time to wrap something, even poorly, says this is special because it's for you. Handwritten cards multiply the impact. And here's a secret. The gift of presence during important events is huge for these people. Being there for their birthday, their presentation, their doctor's appointment, your presence itself becomes a gift. If you struggle with this language, here's a simple system. Keep a note on your phone of things they mention wanting or needing. Notice what catches their eye when you're out together. Pay attention to what they use daily and upgrade it. Set reminders for important dates. Create a gift drawer with small things you can give spontaneously. Remember, it's not about being rich. It's about being thoughtful. The beautiful thing about people whose love language is receiving gifts, they're usually incredible gift givers themselves. They remember what you mentioned 6 months ago. They find the perfect card for every occasion. They understand the joy of giving because they understand the joy of receiving. Their tank is full. They become the most thoughtful, generous people in your life. But for others, all the gifts in the world mean nothing compared to something else. Something that requires no money, but demands something even more valuable. Your effort and your time spent serving. Chapter 7. Love language number 4. Acts of service. Actions speak louder than words. For people whose primary love language is acts of service, this isn't just a saying. It's the fundamental truth of love. You can tell them you love them all day long. You can buy them gifts. You can spend quality time together. But if you don't follow through with actions that make their life easier, they'll feel unloved. Here's what acts of service really means. Doing things you know your partner wants you to do, not things you think they should want, not things that are easy for you, but the specific things that matter to them. It's love expressed through effort. It's through the willingness to do something that costs you time and energy, because it matters to someone you love. For someone who speaks this language, every action is a choice. When you choose to do the dishes without being asked, you're saying, "I love you." When you fill up their gas tank, you're saying, "I care about your safety and convenience." When you take care of that house project they've been stressed about, you're saying your peace of mind matters to me. But here's what makes this language so complex. Acts of service require thought, planning, time, effort, and energy. They're the opposite of instant gratification. You can say "I love you" in 3 seconds. You can buy a gift online in minutes. But changing the oil in their car, cooking their favorite meal, or organizing the closet they've been stressing about, that takes real investment. Dr. Chapman shares a profound insight. For acts of service speakers, love is a verb. It's not something you feel or say, it's something you do. These are the people who grew up hearing, "If you love me, you'll," single quotes, and internalized it. They measure love not by intentions, but by actions. It's not by what you promise, but by what you deliver. Here's how you recognize someone who speaks this language. They notice everything you do and everything you don't do. They feel loved when you take something off their plate without being asked. They feel hurt when you forget to do something you promised. They'd rather you skip the romantic dinner and fix the leaky faucet that's been driving them crazy. For them, practical support is romance. These are the people who melt when you bring them coffee in bed, not because of the coffee, but because you got up early to make it. Who feel cherished when you handle the phone call they've been dreading. Who see you vacuuming as foreplay because it means you noticed the house needed it and took action without being asked. But here's where this language creates conflict. Acts of service speakers often end up with partners who show love differently. The words of affirmation speaker says, "I love you" constantly, but never follows through on promises. The quality time speaker wants to sit and talk about the to-do list instead of actually doing it. The disconnect creates a painful dynamic where one person feels like they're doing everything while their partner just talks about love without showing it. Here's a hard truth. If your partner's love language is acts of service and you're consistently dropping the ball on things you've promised to do, you're not just disappointing them, you're telling them they don't matter enough for you to follow through. Every unkept promise, every half-finished project, every "I'll do it later" that never happens is a withdrawal from their love tank. The challenge with acts of service is that it requires you to do things that might not come naturally to you. Maybe you weren't raised to notice when things need doing. Maybe household tasks feel overwhelming. Maybe you have different standards of cleanliness or organization. But love is about stretching beyond your comfort zone to meet someone where they need you. Here's what fills the tank of an acts of service speaker. Initiative is everything. Doing something without being asked is worth 10 times more than doing it after nagging. Completion matters. Starting a project and abandoning it is worse than not starting at all. Consistency beats grand gestures. Daily small acts of service mean more than occasional big efforts. If this isn't your natural language, here's how to learn it. Start by asking, what can I do this week that would make your life easier? Then actually do it. Notice what tasks stress them out and take ownership of one. Set reminders to follow through on promises. Remember, for them, reliability is romance. Competence is caring. Getting things done is how they spell love. The beautiful thing about acts of service speakers, when their tank is full, they become the most helpful, reliable, supportive partners imaginable. They're the ones who anticipate needs before you voice them, who handle problems before you even know they exist, who show love by making your life run more smoothly. They give what they most need to receive. But for the final group, none of these languages compare to something more fundamental, something that begins before we can even speak and remains essential until our last breath. Chapter 8. Love language number 5. Physical touch. We are born craving touch. Before we can see clearly, before we can understand words, before we can give or receive gifts, we need physical connection to survive. Studies have shown that babies who aren't touched fail to thrive, even if all their other needs are met. For people whose primary love language is physical touch, this need never goes away, just evolves. Let's clear something up immediately. Physical touch as a love language is not primarily about sex. It's about the fundamental human need for physical connection. It's the hand on your shoulder when you're stressed, the hug that lasts just a second longer, the casual touch on the arm during conversation, the feet touching under the dinner table. For physical touch speakers, these moments aren't just nice, they're essential. Dr. Chapman explains that for these individuals, physical touch is their emotional lifeline. Their body is the vehicle through which they receive emotional love. Without touch, they feel disconnected, alone, unloved, no matter what else you do. With touch, they feel secure, valued, connected. It's that simple and that complex. Here's how you recognize someone whose primary language is physical touch. They're constantly touching the people they love, not inappropriately, but consistently. They're the huggers, the hand-holders, the ones who sit close on the couch. They use touch to communicate everything from I'm here. 2, I understand. 2, you're not alone. When they're upset, they need physical comfort more than words or solutions. These are the people who can't sleep without some part of their body touching their partner, who feel disconnected if you sit in separate chairs instead of together on the couch, who light up at a spontaneous hug and wilt during long periods without physical affection. For them, touch isn't just physical. It's deeply emotional. But here's what makes this language challenging in our touch-averse culture. We've become so concerned about inappropriate touch that we've forgotten about appropriate, necessary, life-giving touch. We've sexualized touch to the point where many people are touch-starved, surrounded by others but physically isolated. For someone whose love language is physical touch, living without regular physical affection is like being slowly starved. They might have a spouse who provides financially, speaks lovingly, gives thoughtful gifts, and spends quality time. But if there's no physical connection, they feel alone in the relationship. The absence of touch is the presence of rejection. Here's what fills the love tank of a physical touch speaker. Frequency matters more than intensity. A dozen small touches throughout the day mean more than one long cuddle session. Variety prevents desensitization. Hold hands, play with their hair, rub their back, touch their face. Each type of touch communicates something different. Initiation is crucial. Don't wait for them to always seek touch. Reach out first. In times of crisis, physical touch speakers need touch more than ever. When they're grieving, stressed, or scared, your physical presence and connection is more powerful than any words. Hold them. Be physically present. Let touch communicate what words cannot. For them, physical distance during emotional distress feels like abandonment. The beautiful thing about physical touch speakers? When their tank is full, they become incredibly warm, affectionate, and physically expressive of love. They create safe spaces where appropriate touch is normalized and healing. They understand the power of presence in its most literal form. They remind us that we're not just minds and hearts, but bodies that need connection. Now that we've explored all 5 languages, you might be wondering, which one is mine? Which one speaks to the people I love? The answer to that question might be the most important discovery you make about your relationships. Chapter 9. Discovering your primary love language. Right now, in this moment, you know? Deep down, you already know which love language is yours. As you listen to the descriptions, one of them hit different. One of them made you think, that's me. That's what I've been needing. That's what's been missing. But if you're still unsure, Dr. Chapman provides 3 ways to discover your primary love language with crystal clarity. First, what does your partner do or fail to do that hurts you most deeply? The opposite of that is likely your love language. If you feel most hurt when your partner doesn't notice what you've done for them, acts of service might be your language. If broken promises destroy you, words of affirmation could be key. If canceled plans feel like rejection, quality time is probably primary. The things that wound us most point directly to our deepest needs. Second, what have you most often requested from your partner? What do you find yourself asking for over and over? Not nagging or complaining, but genuinely requesting. I wish we could spend more time together. I need to hear that you appreciate me. Could you help me with this? Do your requests reveal your primary language? You're literally asking for love in the way you need to receive it. Third, how do you regularly express love to others? Most of us give what we wish to receive. If you're always doing things for people, acts of service might be your language. If you're the gift giver in every relationship, that could be your primary way of receiving love too. If you're physically affectionate with everyone you care about, physical touch is probably how you spell love. But here's what Dr. Chapman discovered that changes everything. We don't just have one love language, have a primary and often a secondary. Think of it like being right-handed but still using your left hand. You can receive love in all 5 languages, but 1 or 2 will fill your tank faster and fuller than the others. Here's a diagnostic question that cuts through the confusion. If you could only receive love in one way for the rest of your life, which would you choose? Words that affirm who you are. Time focused entirely on you. Gifts that show you're thought of. Actions that make your life easier. Touch that connects you physically. Your immediate gut response reveals your primary language. Some people discover their love language and feel exposed, like someone just read their diary. That's why I've always felt that way. That's why that relationship failed. That's why I never felt loved even though they tried. It's vulnerable to realize you've been needing something specific all along and maybe not getting it. Others discover their language and feel frustrated. My partner will never be good at this. This isn't how my family shows love. I'm never going to get what I need. But here's the truth. Knowing your language isn't about demanding others speak it perfectly. It's about finally being able to communicate what you need clearly and recognizing love when it comes in forms you didn't expect. Here's what's crucial to understand. Your love language can be influenced by your upbringing, but it's not determined by it. You might crave words of affirmation because you never heard them growing up, or because you heard them constantly and came to depend on them. You might need physical touch because your family was very affectionate, or because they weren't, and you're trying to fill that void. Your love language can also shift with life circumstances. During stressful times, you might need more acts of service. When feeling disconnected, quality time might become primary. After loss or trauma, physical touch might feel essential. The languages aren't fixed, they're fluid, responsive to what you need most in different seasons of life. But here's the game changer. Once you know your primary love language, you can do 3 things that transform your relationships. First, you can clearly communicate to the people who love you how to love you well. No more hoping they figure it out. No more resentment when they miss the mark. You can literally say, "When you do this, I feel most loved." Second, you can recognize love that's been there all along, but in languages you don't naturally speak. Your partner who's been fixing things around the house hasn't been avoiding emotional connection. They've been screaming, "I love you" in acts of service. Your parent, who could never say "I'm proud of you" but never missed a game or recital, was loving you in quality time. Or third, you can stop taking it personally when someone doesn't love you in your language naturally. It's not that they don't love you, it's that they're speaking a different language. Languages can be learned. Now comes the hard part. Knowing your love language is just the beginning, because love isn't about getting your tank filled. Love is about choosing to fill someone else's tank, especially when your own is running low. Which brings us to a truth that revolutionizes how we think about love itself. Chapter 10. Love is a choice. Everything you've learned so far has been leading to this moment. This chapter. This truth that changes everything. Love is not a feeling that happens to you. Love is a choice you make every single day. We've been sold a lie that love is something you fall into and fall out of, that it's a mystical force beyond our control, that when the feeling fades, love is gone and it's time to move on. But Dr. Chapman's decades of research reveals something radically different. The couples who last, who build something beautiful over decades, they all understand one thing: feelings follow actions, not the other way around. Think about what we've covered. In-love experience lasts an average of 2 years. Your brain literally cannot sustain that chemical high indefinitely. So either every relationship is doomed to fail after 2 years, or there's another way to love. A way that doesn't depend on feelings but creates them. A way that doesn't wait for inspiration but generates it. Here's the revolutionary truth. When you choose to love someone in their love language, even when you don't feel like it, something miraculous happens. They feel loved. Their tank fills. They soften. They open. They start reciprocating. And slowly the feelings return. It's not the drug-like high of new love, but something deeper. Something more real. Something that can last a lifetime. But this requires a fundamental shift in how you think about love. Most of us operate on what Dr. Chapman calls the feeling model. I feel love, so I express love. But I don't feel love, so I withdraw. We're passive participants waiting for feelings to move us. But what if you flipped it? What if you chose to express love in order to feel love? This is where knowing the 5 love languages becomes powerful beyond measure. Because now you're not shooting in the dark. You know exactly how to love someone effectively. You know what fills their tank. You know what makes them feel valued, secure, cherished. And you can choose to do those things even when every fiber of your being wants to be selfish. Here's what choosing love looks like in real life. Your love language is words of affirmation, but your partner's is acts of service. You've had a terrible day. You want them to notice, to comfort you with words, to tell you everything will be okay. But instead, they start cleaning the kitchen and making your favorite dinner. Your first instinct is to feel unloved.
Ow.
Why won't they just talk to me? But then you remember, they're loving you in their language. You have a choice. You can sulk and feel misunderstood. Or you can recognize the love being offered, receive it gratefully, and then clearly communicate what you need. Thank you for taking care of dinner. That really helps. Could you also just hold me and tell me I'm going to get through this? Choosing love means learning to be bilingual, fluent in your own language and conversational in your partner's. It means stretching beyond what's comfortable or natural. If physical touch isn't your language but it's theirs, you choose to reach out and touch them anyway. If gift-giving feels pointless to you, but meaningful to them, you choose to find little ways to give. But here's what makes this challenging. Choosing love requires you to love when you're empty, when you're hurt, when you're tired, and the last thing you want to do is speak their love language. This is where most relationships fail, both people waiting for the other to move first. Both people focused on their own empty tank. Both people believing they're the one giving more. Dr. Chapman shares a profound insight. Love is not about finding someone who naturally speaks your language. It's about finding someone willing to learn your language and choosing to teach them patiently. It's about being willing to learn theirs even when it feels foreign. It's about choosing to be the one who loves first, loves most, loves even when it's not returned immediately. This doesn't mean being a doormat. This doesn't mean staying in abusive situations. This doesn't mean ignoring your own needs. It means understanding that in healthy relationships, someone has to go first. Someone has to break the negative cycle. Someone has to choose love when feeling hatred. And that someone might as well be you. Because here's what happens when you choose love consistently. Your partner's tank fills. When their tank is full, they have love to give. When they have love to give, they're more likely to learn your language. When they speak your language, your tank fills. When your tank is full, it's easier to choose love. The cycle reverses. From drain to fill, from resentment to gratitude. From surviving to thriving. The choice to love is especially powerful when you don't feel loved. When your tank is empty, when you have every reason to withdraw, because that's when your choice matters most. That's when you're not just responding to love, but creating it, generating it, building it from nothing. Think about the most powerful moments in any relationship. They're rarely the easy times when love flows naturally. Or the moments when someone chooses love against all odds. It's when someone forgives the unforgivable. When someone gives from their emptiness, and someone speaks a love language that costs them everything to speak. But what happens when choosing love feels impossible? What happens when the person you need to love seems completely unlovable? That brings us to one of the most challenging and transformative chapters in this journey. Chapter 11. Love makes the difference. What happens when you understand the 5 love languages, but the person you need to love seems impossible to reach? What if their tank has been empty so long they've built walls you can't penetrate? What if years of speaking different languages has created such distance that you don't even know where to start? Dr. Chapman addresses this with a truth that's both challenging and liberating. Love makes the difference not because it changes the other person, but because it changes you. When you choose to love someone who seems unlovable, you become a different person. And sometimes, that transformation is enough to transform everything else. Think about the relationships in your life that feel stuck. The spouse who's grown cold and distant. The teenager who responds to everything with anger. The parent who's never satisfied no matter what you do. The friend who always takes but never gives. Your natural instinct is to protect yourself, to withdraw, to match their energy, to give what you get. But what if you disrupted the pattern? What if you became a love scientist, experimenting with pouring love into someone who seems to have nothing to give back, not forever, not without boundaries, but intentionally, strategically, with the 5 love languages as your guide? Here's what Dr. Chapman discovered in his counseling practice. Relationships that seemed most hopeless often had the most dramatic turnarounds. Why? Because when someone has been love-starved for years, even small deposits in their love tank create noticeable changes. Like a plant that's been dying in the desert, just a little water can bring it back to life. But this requires a different kind of love. A mature love. A love that doesn't keep score. A love that understands you might need to give 100 deposits before you see one withdrawal. A love that finds its reward not in reciprocation, but in the act of loving itself. Let's get practical. You've identified that your distant spouse's love language is physical touch, but they've rejected your advances for months. Instead of giving up, you start small. A hand on their shoulder as you pass. A brief touch on the arm when handing them coffee. No expectation, no demand for response. Just consistent, gentle, respectful touch that says I'm here, without requiring anything back. Or maybe your angry teenager speaks words of affirmation, but all you've exchanged lately are harsh words. You begin leaving notes. Proud of how you handled that situation? I noticed you helped your sister. That was kind. Your strength amazes me. Not lectures, not advice, just pure affirmation of who they are beneath the anger. The key is consistency without expectation. You're not doing this to manipulate a response. You're doing it because you've chosen to be a person who loves. You're conducting an experiment in what happens when one person refuses to let a relationship die, even when the other person seems to have given up. Dr. Chapman shares story after story of marriages on the brink of divorce that turned around when one person committed to loving unconditionally for 6 months. Not enabling bad behavior, not accepting abuse, but consistently filling the other person's love tank without keeping score. In almost every case, somewhere between month 3 and month 6, something shifted. Here's why this works. When someone's love tank has been empty for years, they develop protective mechanisms. They stop hoping. They stop trying. They convince themselves they don't need love to protect themselves from the pain of not having it. But when love starts flowing in their language consistently, those walls eventually crack. The heart that seemed dead starts beating again. But let's be honest about how hard this is. Loving someone who doesn't love you back feels like pouring water into a bucket with no bottom. Your friends think you're foolish. Your own emotions scream at you to stop. Everything in our culture says you deserve better. You should leave. You should find someone who appreciates you. And maybe you should. This isn't about staying in abusive situations or accepting treatment that destroys your own well-being. This is about understanding that in relationships that are struggling but not abusive, someone has to be the hero. Someone has to be the one who says, I'll go first, I'll love first, I'll break this cycle. The difference love makes isn't always in the other person. Sometimes the difference is in you. When you choose to love someone difficult, you develop patience you didn't know you had. When you learn to speak a love language that doesn't come naturally, you become more complete. When you give without receiving, you discover that love itself is the reward. Here's a practical plan if you're facing a difficult relationship. First, identify their primary love language through observation, not asking. Watch what they complain about. Notice what they request. See how they try to show love to others. Second, commit to speaking their language consistently for at least 3 months without expecting anything in return. Third, keep your own tank filled through other relationships, self-care, and remembering why you're doing this. Fourth, and this is crucial, celebrate small victories. Did they seem slightly less tense when you touched their shoulder? Victory? Did they pause for a second after reading your note? Victory? Did they eat the meal you cooked without complaining? Victory? You're not looking for dramatic transformation. You're looking for signs of life. The difference love makes is often invisible at first. It's like water seeping into dry ground. It disappears without apparent effect. But underground roots are drinking. Seeds are germinating. Life is preparing to break through. One day, often when you least expect it, something green appears in what seemed like permanent desert. But what about those people who seem truly unlovable? The ones who hurt us repeatedly? The ones whose behavior goes beyond difficult to destructive? That brings us to perhaps the most challenging chapter of all. Chapter 12. Loving the unlovely. Everyone has someone in their life who feels impossible to love. The critical parent who never approves. The ex-spouse who uses the children as weapons. The family member whose addiction destroys every holiday. The friend who betrayed you. Colleague who undermines you. Not just difficult people, but people whose behavior is genuinely harmful. Dr. Chapman doesn't pretend this is easy. He doesn't offer platitudes about forgiveness making everything better. Instead, he offers something more powerful, a framework for loving that protects you while potentially transforming them. Because here's the paradox. The people who deserve love least often need it most. First, Let's be clear about what loving the unlovely doesn't mean. It doesn't mean accepting abuse. It doesn't mean enabling destructive behavior. It doesn't mean pretending everything is fine. It doesn't mean having no boundaries. Loving the unlovely means choosing to see the humanity in someone who seems to have lost their own. Here's the psychological truth behind difficult people. Hurt people hurt people. Behind every cruel word is usually a wounded heart. Behind every controlling behavior is usually deep fear. Behind every wall of anger is usually an ocean of pain. This doesn't excuse their behavior, but understanding it changes how you respond to it. When you're dealing with someone truly difficult, the 5 love languages become both more challenging and more important. Because you're not just trying to communicate love, you're trying to communicate through years of dysfunction, pain, and protective mechanisms. Start with boundaries. Loving the unlovely doesn't mean becoming their victim. It means deciding what you will and won't accept, communicating it clearly, and following through consistently. I love you, and I won't listen to you speak to me that way. I care about you, and I won't enable your drinking. I want a relationship with you, and that requires mutual respect. Then, look for windows. Even the most difficult people have moments of vulnerability, times when their guard drops slightly. Maybe it's when they're tired or sick or caught off guard by kindness. These windows might only last seconds, but they're opportunities to deposit love in their language before the walls go back up. Here's a strategy that seems counterintuitive but works. Love them in their language when they least deserve it. Not during their bad behavior, never reward that. But shortly after, when they might be feeling shame or regret. The critical parent who just berated you might be secretly hating themselves. A small act of service later that day says, I still see your worth even when you don't. Dr. Chapman shares something profound. The most unlovely people are usually the most love-starved. They've often spent their entire lives speaking a love language no one understood, feeling empty, and eventually deciding love doesn't exist. Their unlovely behavior is often a twisted attempt to get the love they need or a protective mechanism against the pain of not having it. This doesn't mean you become their therapist or savior. It means you become a consistent source of the specific type of love they understand. Within boundaries that protect your own well-being, you become proof that love exists, even if they can't receive it fully yet. Here's what this might look like practically. The critical parent whose love language is words of affirmation might criticize because they never received affirmation themselves. Instead of defending yourself, you might say, I know you want the best for me. I appreciate that you care. You're not agreeing with their criticism. You're affirming the love behind it, however twisted its expression. The controlling spouse whose language is quality time might be demanding because they feel unseen. Instead of fighting for space, you might schedule specific focused time together. I need some time alone right now, and I'm looking forward to our date night Friday. You're setting boundaries while speaking their language. The key to loving the unlovely is refusing to let their dysfunction dictate your character. They may never change. They may never appreciate your efforts. They may never love you back in any language, but that's not why you're doing it. You're doing it because you've decided to be a person who loves, regardless of the response. This kind of love requires support. You need your own tank filled from other sources. You need people who understand what you're trying to do. You need professional help if the relationship is abusive. You need regular reminders of why you're choosing this path. Sometimes, loving the unlovely means loving them from a distance. Sometimes it means very limited contact with very specific boundaries. Sometimes it means recognizing that the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable their behavior by removing yourself from it. Love doesn't always mean presence. Sometimes it means protective absence. But here's what happens when you commit to loving the unlovely in their language, with boundaries consistently over time. First, you change. You become stronger, clearer, more capable of love. Second, you plant seeds. Even if you never see them grow, you've put love into the world where there was none. Third, sometimes miracles happen. The walls come down. The person remembers how to love. The relationship transforms. The question isn't whether they deserve your love. The question is whether you want to be a person who only loves those who deserve it. Because if that's your standard, none of us qualify. We're all unlovely to someone. We all have moments, seasons, years where we're difficult to love. And yet someone loved us anyway. Someone spoke our language when we couldn't speak theirs. As we near the end of this journey, Dr. Chapman has one more thing to say, something personal, something that brings everything we've learned into sharp focus. Chapter 13. A personal word. After decades of counseling thousands of couples, studying relationships across cultures, and teaching the 5 love languages to millions, Dr. Chapman ends with something unexpected. Not more theory, not more techniques, but a personal confession that changes everything. He tells us that he discovered the 5 love languages, not through academic research, but through failure. His own failure to love his wife well. His own frustration when his best efforts seemed to mean nothing. His own emptiness when he was trying so hard to love and feeling so unloved in return. The 5 love languages weren't discovered by a relationship expert. They were discovered by a husband desperate to save his marriage. This confession reframes everything we've learned, because it means this isn't theoretical knowledge handed down from an ivory tower. It's practical wisdom born from the trenches of real relationship struggle. It's a map drawn by someone who was lost and found a way home, then spent his life helping others find their way too. Dr. Chapman shares something vulnerable. Even knowing the 5 love languages doesn't make relationships easy. He still has to choose to speak his wife's language when he's tired. He still fails sometimes. He still has moments when his own tank is empty and he doesn't want to give. Knowledge doesn't eliminate the need for choice, just makes the choice clearer. Here's what he wants you to know as you finish this journey. The 5 love languages aren't a magic formula that makes relationships effortless. They're a tool that makes effort effective. There's a crucial difference. You'll still have conflicts. You'll still have seasons of distance. You'll still have days when you don't like the person you love. But now you know how to find your way back. The personal word Dr. Chapman leaves us with is this. Every relationship you have is a language learning opportunity. Your spouse, your children, your parents, your friends, your colleagues. Each person in your life speaks a primary love language, and your ability to connect with them depends on your willingness to become multilingual. But here's the deeper truth. Learning to speak all 5 love languages doesn't just improve your relationships. It completes you as a human being, because each language represents a different facet of love, a different way of connecting, a different expression of care. When you can speak all 5, you become capable of loving anyone, in any situation, in the way they need. Think about what you've learned. Words of affirmation taught you the power of spoken encouragement. Quality time taught you the value of presence. Receiving gifts taught you about symbolic love. Acts of service taught you love through sacrifice. Physical touch taught you connection beyond words. Together they form a complete vocabulary of human connection. Dr. Chapman's personal word includes a challenge. Start where you are, with who's in front of you, with the relationship that's most important or most broken. Don't wait for the perfect moment or the ideal circumstances. Don't wait until your own tank is full. Don't wait for them to move first. Be the one who loves first, loves most, loves in the language they understand. He also shares a promise. When you commit to learning and speaking the 5 love languages, you join millions of people worldwide who have transformed their relationships. You're not alone in this journey. Every day, someone discovers their spouse's love language and saves their marriage. Every day, a parent connects with a child they thought they'd lost. Every day, someone chooses to love in a new language, and everything changes. But perhaps the most personal word is this. You are worthy of love in your language. If you've spent years feeling unloved, despite being surrounded by people who care about you, it's not because you're too needy or too difficult. It's because love was being lost in translation. Now you have the words to ask for what you need. Use them. As we close, remember that this knowledge comes with responsibility. You now know something that can heal relationships, restore connections, and transform lives. You know how to love people effectively. You know how to help others feel loved. You know how to bridge the gap between hearts that want to connect but don't know how. The 5 love languages aren't just information to store in your mind. They're tools to use every day, in every interaction, with every person who matters to you. Because at the end of your life, you won't remember the TV shows you watched or the meetings you attended or the things you worried about. You'll remember the people you loved and how well you loved them. Dr. Chapman's final word is simply this: now you know. You can love and be loved in ways that truly connect. Now you can stop the cycle of emotional emptiness and misunderstanding that plagues so many relationships. Now you can build something beautiful, lasting, and real. The only question is, will you? The 5 love languages are your roadmap. The choice to use them is yours. And that choice, made daily, consistently, courageously, is what will make the difference between a life of relationship frustration and a life of deep, satisfying connection. You came to this book looking for answers about love. You're leaving with something better. You're leaving with a new language. Actually, 5 new languages. And fluency in these languages will determine the quality of every relationship you have for the rest of your life. The journey doesn't end here. It begins. Every conversation is a chance to practice. Every conflict is an opportunity to translate. Every relationship is a classroom where you can become more fluent in love. Welcome to a life of speaking love in languages that actually land. Welcome to relationships that actually work. Now welcome to the community of people who know the secret. Love isn't just what you feel. It's how you communicate what you feel in a language the other person speaks. Now go. Someone in your life is waiting to hear "I love you" in a language they understand. Someone is waiting to feel loved in the way they've always needed. Someone is one conversation away from finally understanding that they've been loved all along. You know the 5 languages? You know how to discover which one matters most? You know how to choose love when feelings fade. You know how to love the difficult and the distant. You know everything you need to know. The only thing left is to begin, today, with the next person you see, with the next conversation you have, with the next opportunity to choose love over indifference, connection over isolation, understanding over judgment. Your relationships are about to change. Your capacity to love is about to expand. Your ability to receive love is about to multiply, because you now speak the languages of the heart. Use them well. Use them often. Use them to build a life rich in the only currency that truly matters: human connection. The 5 love languages. Now you know. Now you choose. Now you love.